If you grow up in a small town, privacy is a myth. People watch, people talk, people remember things you never told them. Sometimes things you didn't even know about yourself. Even if you stay quiet, the truth always finds a way to knock on your door. I was 13 when it happened. My friends and I were sitting on a cracked park bench near the edge of town, passing a soda bottle back and forth, arguing about something stupid I can't even remember now. The afternoon was warm, lazy, harmless. Then she appeared. Just a woman, ordinary, the kind you wouldn't notice twice in a grocery store. She stopped right in front of me and smiled, not kindly, not cruelly, just knowingly. "I've been waiting forever to catch you alone," she said. Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. Then she leaned closer and asked, "Don't you know you're adopted?" Just like that. No warning, no softness. The words didn't land. They detonated. Why did I need that truth? Why there, in the open, where my friends could hear it echo? Puberty had already turned my world into a minefield. But after that moment, something inside me collapsed completely. I went home in a fog. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I searched every drawer, every cabinet, every dusty shelf. Paper after paper slid through my shaking hands until I found it. The documents, the signatures, the dates. Proof. I wasn't theirs. I remember staring at the ink until the letters blurred together. An outsider. That word rooted itself deep inside my chest and refused to leave. After that day, the house stopped feeling like home. The walls looked unfamiliar. The air felt heavy. Even the silence sounded different, like it belonged to someone else. I couldn't breathe there anymore. One thought pounded through my skull over and over. Run. Run far enough that no one knows your name, far enough that gossip can't follow. So I told the only two people in the world I trusted, Mason and Hannah. We'd been inseparable since first grade, the kind of friendship built on scraped knees, shared secrets, and the quiet promise that none of us would ever have to face the world alone. Hannah lived in a house where shouting was just another form of conversation. Mason was constantly trying to prove he wasn't afraid of anything, especially to himself. When I told them I was leaving, neither of them laughed. Because the truth was, we'd all dreamed about escape. Beyond the old highway stretched miles of northern wilderness, endless forest, cold streams, forgotten logging roads, and somewhere out there stood an abandoned settlement. Old-timers called it Key Hollow. Loggers had once lived there decades ago, but the place had been swallowed by the forest. Empty cabins rotted slowly beneath the trees, as if the land itself were reclaiming them. Remote, silent, perfect. Exactly the kind of place where no one would ask who you used to be. We left before sunrise. Our backpacks held the bare minimum: matches, salt, 2 threadbare blankets, and a kitchen knife I'd stolen from home without letting myself think about it too hard. The bus that carried us north rattled like it might come apart at any moment. Dust streamed through the open windows, coating our tongues with grit. None of us spoke. Each of us sat alone with our thoughts, and whatever ghosts we were trying to outrun. When the wilderness finally rose around the road like a dark wall, the driver slowed. He looked at us strangely as we stepped off, 3 kids disappearing into nowhere. But he didn't ask questions. The bus doors slammed shut, its engine faded, and then there was nothing. No traffic, no voices, just a silence so thick it almost roared in our ears. The kind of silence that makes you suddenly aware of your own heartbeat. Ahead stretched nearly 7 miles of broken dirt road winding into the deep woods.
"Hey, Gabe," Hannah called softly after we'd been walking a while. You're sure we'll find the cabins? I was there once when I was little, but I barely remember it. We'll find them, I snapped, more sharply than I meant to. I studied the map. We head toward the northern slope. There's a stream. Houses were built along it. Mason trudged behind us, catching his boots on roots. What if someone already lives there? Other runaways, squatters, animals? He hesitated. Maybe this was a bad idea. Forests are different at night. I stopped walking. The weight of my pack dragged at my shoulders, but something heavier pressed inside my chest. I turned to them. Listen to me, I said quietly. I'm not going back. There's nothing there for me. Every memory in that house feels fake now. Every breath. I swallowed. If you want to turn around, do it before the road disappears. But I came out here to live. For real this time. Mason stared at the ground. Hannah stepped closer and touched my sleeve. We're with you, she said. It's just creepy out here. We kept moving. The deeper we walked, the older the forest seemed. Massive fir trees smothered the sky. Sunlight barely filtered through, falling in pale, sickly patches across the earth. The air smelled of wet bark and something ancient, something patient. After a few miles, our legs felt like stone. The road narrowed into a trail choked with fallen branches. Every step became work. Then Mason suddenly froze. Look! Through the tangled brush, a shape emerged. Gray wood. A building. The first cabin sagged halfway into the earth. Its roof collapsed, its door hanging crooked like a broken wing. But farther uphill stood another structure. Darker, sturdier. Thick logs weathered by decades, yet still upright. That one, I said, pointing. We sleep there. The porch groaned beneath our weight.
When I pushed the door open, a smell rolled out to meet us. Dust, old fabric, and the faint sourness of long-abandoned life. A rusted stove crouched in the corner. An overturned tin mug rested on the table as if someone had meant to return for it, and never did. Well, I muttered, dropping my pack. Home sweet home. I forced a smile. Mason, firewood, dry pieces if you can find them. Hannah, look for a path to the stream. We'll need water before dark. What happens after we light the fire? She asked quietly, staring into the empty rooms. I glanced toward the window. Outside, the forest was already beginning to dim. We live, I said. Tomorrow we patch the walls, make this place ours. No parents, no secrets. Just us and the wilderness. For the first time since learning the truth, I almost felt free. But freedom has a sound, and that night, the forest began to make it. Hannah found the stream just before dusk. It ran through a shallow ravine behind the cabins, narrow, cold, and whispering over smooth stones like it was telling secrets to itself. Good water, clean enough to drink. That should have comforted us. Instead, it only made the wilderness feel more real. By the time darkness settled in, we were already locked inside the cabin. There were 3 rooms. One held an iron bed frame stripped bare of any mattress, its metal ribs exposed like bones. Another contained a warped cabinet with cloudy glass that reflected nothing clearly. The kitchen still housed the old stove, though rust had eaten through parts of it, and rain had stained the ceiling in spreading black veins. One window remained intact. The other had been stuffed long ago with what looked like a rotten coat, an attempt to keep the wind out, or something else from getting in. Bugs ruled the floor. Woodlice shuffled through the dust.
Fat centipedes curled and uncurled in the cracks, hunting things we couldn't see.
When full darkness finally swallowed the forest, we barred the front door with a thick branch wedged through the handle, and waited. Sleep never came. We huddled together, listening. At first, it was only the wind dragging itself through the trees. Then something howled, far away, stretched thin with distance. A wolf, maybe. Or maybe not. Minutes later came a new sound, scratching, directly beneath us. Slow, deliberate, like something tracing the underside of the floor.
"Gabe," Mason whispered, "do you hear that? It sounds like someone's moving under the house."
"Mice," I said automatically, but a cold line had already formed along my spine. "It's an old cabin. Old places make noises." Hannah tightened her grip on my jacket.
"I saw tracks near the ravine," she whispered. "Too big for a dog."
We fell silent. The uncovered window gaped blackly at us, an enormous, lidless eye staring in from the night. Then, thud! Somewhere deeper inside the house. Heavy, metallic, as if something iron had been dropped onto the floor. None of us breathed. Another sound followed. Movement. Not outside. Inside. We didn't discuss it. Didn't vote. We simply moved. All three of us stepping into the hallway together, clinging to each other like drowning people. And then we saw him. A man sat in the far corner, back turned, digging through a mound of junk with quick, jerking motions. We couldn't see his face. He seemed to be whispering something under his breath, the words too faint to catch. Every muscle in my body locked. The door was still barred. We had sealed it ourselves, which meant only one thing. He had been here the entire time, listening while we talked, watching us claim the place as ours. "Hannah!" The sound shattered whatever fragile courage we had left. We bolted back into the nearest room, slammed the warped interior door shut, and threw our weight against it. Through a narrow crack in the wood, I watched. The man rose slowly, not rushing, not threatening, just standing. Then he turned left and drifted silently out of sight, dissolving into the darkness of the kitchen. "Gabe, who is that?" Mason, shaking violently. "Why isn't he saying anything?" "Quiet," I hissed. "Don't let him hear we're scared." The cabin went still again, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the kind that listens back. The scratching beneath the floor returned. A mouse shrieked somewhere in the kitchen. Then came a new sound, slow, deliberate, like a blade being dragged across wood, right outside our door. "He's here, Hannah." The thin line of light beneath the door vanished. Something stood on the other side, waiting. We held that door until our arms went numb. Every rustle sent my pulse hammering into my throat. Again and again my eyes flicked toward the window. My greatest fear wasn't the thing outside the door. It was the idea that another face might suddenly appear at the glass. I didn't share that thought. We were already close to breaking. Hours crawled past. Then, just before dawn, a sound floated faintly through the trees. A rooster crowing. The absurdity of it froze us. A rooster? Out here? When gray light finally seeped into the cabin, we dared to move. We stepped into the hallway ready for anything. The house was empty. No man, no footprints, nothing disturbed.
Outside, fog drifted lazily across the grass, as though the night had imagined itself. We pushed deeper into the abandoned settlement. Most of the huts were collapsing into themselves, swallowed by rot and moss. Then we saw it. One house stood apart from the others, intact. A freshly painted fence circled it, bright against the decay around it. It didn't belong there. Someone lived here. "Look," Mason said, pointing at the clean boards. "Whoever was in our cabin, maybe they came from here." I clenched my fists. If people live here, they might have food. We approached the gate. A pair of worn boots rested neatly on the porch, and from the chimney curled a thin ribbon of blue smoke. Someone had lit a fire. "Hello?" I called, fighting to steady my voice. "Anyone home?" The door creaked inward. A shape appeared in the threshold. He didn't step outside immediately. First came the dragging shuffle of slow feet, a cough. Then the old man emerged, thin as a stripped branch, yet somehow solid. His face was carved with deep lines like knife marks in bark. He wore a greasy shearling vest over a faded shirt, but it was his eyes that held us. Pale, almost colorless. The kind of eyes that didn't just look at you, but seemed to look through you. He chewed silently for a moment before speaking in a hoarse rasp. "Well now, living children on my porch. Haven't seen that in a while. Why are you standing there like salt pillars? Come inside. The wilderness doesn't care much for people who linger in the open." His voice sounded dry, like sand slipping through an hourglass. We exchanged glances. Mason edged backward, but Hannah stepped forward. Cold and hunger can make courage out of anyone. I followed, one hand wrapped tight around the knife in my pocket. The house smelled of dried herbs, tobacco, and old cat fur. A dim lamp glowed on the table. The old man sat us down on a bench but remained standing, hands clasped behind his back. "So," he rasped, narrowing one eye. "Who are you? City kids by the look of you. Runaways, maybe. Did your parents wrong you, or did the law catch up?" I swallowed and forced my voice steady. "I'm Gabe. This is Mason and Hannah. We just need a place to stay. We're not thieves." The old man, "Need space, do you?" He slapped the doorframe. "This forest isn't a park. Every breath costs something here. I've lived alone 30 years. He tapped his chest. "Name's Makar, forester."
Watchman and the corpse nobody bothered to bury. Hannah hesitated.
"Were you in that cabin last night? We saw a man in the corner, whispering." Makar froze. Slowly, he turned his head toward her. "In the corner, you say? Maybe it was me. Maybe it wasn't. Plenty wander these woods. Stay away from that cabin. Its walls remember blood." He stepped closer. "If you want to keep breathing, stay here while I'm feeling generous." From a cupboard, he produced a blackened pot and dropped a hardened chunk of bread onto the table. "Eat, then we'll decide what to do with you." His pale eyes sharpened. "One rule, don't leave the forest without my say. The paths twist. Take one wrong step, and you vanish." Mason nodded frantically, already chewing. I watched the old man instead. On a shelf behind him sat a small wooden chest. Something about it unsettled me, though I couldn't yet say why. And for the first time since arriving in the wilderness, I wondered if running away had brought us somewhere far worse than home. Old Man Makar watched us chew for a long time. Not rudely, not impatiently, just watching. Like a man studying animals that had wandered too close to his fire. Then he lowered himself onto the bench across from us and rested his cheek against his dry palm. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. It was quieter now, thicker, like tree sap slowly bleeding from a wound. "So," he said, staring somewhere past our shoulders.
"You ran away."
He nodded faintly to himself.
"You think freedom means no one standing over you, no one telling you what to do."
His pale eyes shifted toward the window.
"Let me tell you about my neighbor."
None of us interrupted.
"In that very cabin you spent the night,"
He continued.
"there once lived a house spirit. Old thing, hair like moss, stubborn as a root. Loved his family fiercely."
Hannah stopped chewing.
"When the village emptied,"
Makar went on,
"the people fled in a hurry.
Took their furniture, their icons, their livestock, but forgot him. Didn't invite him into the new house. The old man's fingers tapped softly against the table, so he stayed behind. Silence stretched. For years he waited, howled so loud even the wolves kept their distance. A house rots fast without its people, but a spirit without a family rots faster." A faint smile ghosted across Makar's lips. Grief drove him mad. Now he crouches in corners, listening. If only someone would scold him once more for muddy footprints, complain about spilled milk. Makar leaned closer. He'd give anything for it. The lamp flickered. "Because without family," he finished quietly, "you are dust. One strong wind, and you're gone." I sniffed sharply. "So what?" I shot back, anger flaring before I could stop it. "Families aren't always great. They punish you, control everything, act like you owe them just because they feed you." My voice grew harder. "They took my phone, force homework on me even when there isn't any, like I'm property." Makar's gaze locked onto mine. Something needle-sharp glinted inside those nearly colorless eyes.
"You're a foolish boy, Gabe," he said, "blinded by hurt. You think truth lives on paper?"
He shook his head.
"Ink means nothing. Blood is just water."
His voice dropped lower.
"What matters is who spent their strength raising you, whose heart broke when fever burned through your body, who cleaned the blood from your knees."
The smell of smoke clung to him as he leaned forward.
"You think losing a phone is tragedy?" he rasped. "They cling to you because they want you to grow into something stronger than roadside weeds."
He tapped the table once.
"Love isn't always gentle. Sometimes it pulls, sometimes it forces. But if someone spends their life shaping yours, it means you are needed."
His eyes darkened.
When no one cares where you are, when no one asks about your day, then you are truly alone. Like the spirit in the abandoned cabin. No one spoke. The stove crackled softly, scattering sparks behind its iron door. "What difference does birth make?" Makar added more quietly. "Even animals give birth. But raising a soul, keeping it warm so it doesn't freeze in this world." He studied my face. "That is family." His words struck deeper than the revelation of my adoption ever had. For the first time since running away, I didn't know what to say. Hannah sniffed.
"My mom once locked me inside for a whole day," she said. "I hated her for it. Thought she was ruining my life." She swallowed. "The next day, a boy disappeared from the garages down the road. Kidnapped. Never found." Her fingers tightened around the bread. "It could have been me. She must have felt something was wrong." I looked away stubbornly. "That's different. Mine lied to me my entire life." Makar let out a thin whistle.
"Your entire life," he echoed. "And how long is that? 13 years?"
A faint, almost pitying smile touched his mouth. What a vast eternity of lies. Heat crept into my face. The old man studied us a moment longer before clapping his hands once. Well then, runaways. You seem decent enough. Not rotten yet. He rose slowly. Tell you what, help an old man with a small task, and I'll give you a proper hot meal. Something with smoke in it. Something real. At the word meal, Mason shifted eagerly, but a strange tension prickled along my skin. Gabe, Mason whispered suddenly, stuffing his things into his pack. I think I'm going home. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I thought this would feel different. I want my mom. Hannah stayed silent, staring at the floor. There we were, 2 kids facing an endless forest, and a man we barely knew.
Go then, I muttered, though something twisted painfully inside me. If you're scared.
Makar chuckled softly.
Alone? Through these woods?
He shrugged.
Best of luck, boy. The forest doesn't waste its circles.
That was when something strange struck me. Night had fallen, but hadn't it just been morning when we arrived? I opened my mouth to ask, but Makar groaned irritably and slapped his knee.
Blasted rooster missed noon again. Bird's losing his mind.
He stomped outside, and we followed. On the fence perched a ridiculous-looking rooster with bright ruffled feathers. Makar nudged it with his boot.
Confusing day and night again, are you? Mischief maker.
The rooster flapped angrily. Then Makar straightened, lifted his arms, tilted his face toward the pitch-black sky, and shouted with ceremonial force,
Noon!
The world tore open. Darkness shattered like thin glass. In a single, impossible heartbeat, blazing sunlight spilled over the treetops. Shadows snapped into existence beneath our feet. Fog evaporated midair. Cicadas screamed with sudden heat. One moment, midnight. The next, burning day. We stood frozen. Mason's mouth hung open. Hannah shielded her eyes. My thoughts simply stopped. Who was this man? Makar turned toward us, sunlight carving his features into something ancient and immovable.
Well,
he said slyly.
Interested in a local meal? Not factory candy, but a gift from the forest itself.
He crooked a finger.
Ready to earn it?
Yet even as he beckoned us inside, his gaze lingered on the silent wilderness, as if waiting for it to answer him. Old man Makar leaned against the doorway and studied us like a man measuring wood before the cut. Then he slowly lifted one withered hand and pointed beyond the edge of his garden.
Look there,
he croaked.
Past the crooked fence, the land fell sharply into a shadow-filled ravine where the forest thickened into something almost black. In that low ground, he continued, where the earth never dries and the moss remembers centuries, you'll find nettles. He paused. Not the young kind, the old ones. Even from the yard we could see them. A dense wall of dark green rising higher than a grown man. Their leaves trembled slightly, though no wind touched them, every surface bristling with fine, venomous hairs. They looked less like plants and more like something alive that had chosen to stand still. Bring them to me, Makar said calmly. Carefully. They sting worse than anger, but I need them. His cracked lips curled faintly. I'll chop them fine, steam them, feed them to my rooster so he'll sing properly again. Stop tangling day with night. Something about that explanation felt wrong. Too simple, too rehearsed. But before we could question him, he added, Do this, and you'll taste a meal unlike any you've known. Afterward, you may go home." His pale eyes settled on me. "By then you might understand which is better, bitter independence or the care you fled from." I glanced at Mason and Hannah. Both were staring at the nettles with visible dread. "How are we supposed to grab those?" I asked. "They'll burn straight through us. We don't even have gloves." Makar chuckled softly and reached inside his vest. From it, he produced 3 pairs of rough leather gloves, old but thick. "Take them. Work honestly. The forest feeds no idlers." As we stepped toward the ravine, he called after us. "Care always stings at first, but afterward, it warms." I didn't like the way he said that. The descent was treacherous. Wet grass slid beneath our boots, and the air grew colder the farther down we went, stale and unmoving, like something sealed away. When we reached the first stalks, I understood why the old man hadn't gathered them himself. They were monstrous. Thick stems, dark leaves, needles so fine they looked almost like fur. Even brushing one sent a sharp electric pain through the fabric of the gloves. "Hannah," I muttered, snapping a stem with effort. "This better be worth it." "I think he's messing with us," she whispered, wrestling another stalk free. "What kind of rooster eats nettles? And why send us into a pit for dinner?" I hesitated, then answered quietly, "After what he did with the sun, I'm done guessing what's possible." We worked in uneasy silence. Sweat soaked our backs despite the chill air. Our hands tingled violently inside the gloves. Each time we hauled armfuls uphill, Makar stood on the porch, counting our bundles with small, approving nods. "Good, good," he murmured. "Care is never painless." By the time the last pile lay stacked beside the house, my arms felt carved from stone. Makar beckoned us inside. On the table waited a massive cast-iron pot sealed with a heavy lid. Something drifted from beneath it, an aroma so rich it made my head swim. Forest, honey, warm bread, and something else, something heartbreakingly familiar. "Sit," the old man said solemnly, gripping the lid. "Now you'll taste it." When he lifted the iron cover, a cloud of fragrant steam burst upward, filling the hut. All 3 of our stomachs growled at once. "Eat," Makar ordered. He ladled the contents into chipped clay bowls. We grabbed our spoons eagerly and froze. It was water, just boiling water, faintly smoky, touched with herbs, but empty. No vegetables, no meat, nothing. We stared at each other. Across the table, Makar smiled broadly through the gaps in his teeth. "Well?" he asked. "Delicious, isn't it?" Anger surged hot in my chest. "There's nothing here," I snapped. "Just water. Why does it smell like that?" The old man slapped his knee, delighted. "Exactly, a fine smell, but no substance, just like your runaway life." His eyes glittered. "It promises adventure, freedom, but in truth, emptiness." He crossed to an old crate and returned carrying eggs and a bundle of the very nettles we had gathered. "To make life nourishing," he went on, cracking the eggs straight into the pot, "you must add something of yourself. Labor, care, heart." The chopped nettles followed. He stirred. "See? I fed the hens nettles. Now they give eggs. Eggs go into the pot. The water becomes soup."
Steam thickened, richer now. "Without effort," Makar said quietly, "there is only the illusion of living." When he served the bowls again, the scent deepened until it almost hurt to breathe. We ate silently, burning our tongues. Yet something inside me felt hollow. The smell of freedom wasn't freedom at all. Makar watched us. "Still don't understand?" he asked lightly. "No matter. Tomorrow you'll taste it differently." That was enough for me. I rose and jerked my head toward the door. We were leaving. Crazy old man, time tricks, empty meals. I'd had enough. We stepped back into the cooling air and headed toward the abandoned cabin. We grabbed our belongings quickly. One thought drove us forward: find the trail, reach the dirt road, walk until the bus stop appeared. But the forest had other plans. We walked for hours. I remembered landmarks, the crooked oak, the fallen pine, yet nothing aligned the way it should have. The path dissolved beneath ferns. Trees repeated themselves, shadows stretched wrong. By the time darkness swallowed the woods again, our feet were bleeding and our nerves shredded. Then, impossibly, the fence appeared ahead. Painted boards, blue smoke. We had walked in a circle. Makar stood on the porch as though he'd never moved. His teeth gleamed in the dark.
Back so soon? Rushing home? Tell me, who waits for you there besides lessons and lies?
"What did you do?" I shouted, throwing my pack down. "We walked for 3 hours. Where's the road?" He only chuckled. "Stay the night. Plenty of room. I prepared beds. Knew you'd return." Inside, 3 bunks stood waiting. One wide and soft, piled high with feather bedding that practically breathed comfort. The second, narrower, covered by a thin blanket. The third, broken. Its frame sagged inward, a dirty rag for a pillow. "Who sleeps where?" I demanded. No answer. Makar had vanished. One moment he stood beside us, the next, only silence remained. Even his small room was sealed shut. Hannah whispered, "These beds feel like a choice." "I'm taking the middle one," Mason said quickly, dropping onto it. I stared at the broken cot. Its exposed bars reminded me of ribs beneath torn skin. For reasons I couldn't explain, it felt like it belonged to me. Hell broke loose inside the hut. What started as hesitation over the beds turned ugly fast. Sharp words, shoving shoulders, voices rising higher with every second. "I'm taking the soft one," Hannah snapped, pushing Mason aside. "My feet are killing me, and at home I sleep on a real bed. I deserve at least that much." "What makes you special?" Mason shot back, gripping the feather mattress. "Out here it's first come, first served. My dad always says, take what you can before someone else does." He shoved her, harder than he meant to. Hannah hit the floor with a gasp, not hurt, just stunned. And then the tears came, hot and furious. "Screw you!" she shouted. "Your family fights over scraps, so now you act like an animal, and you—" She turned on me. "You just stand there, Gabe? Say something! Or does none of this matter to you because you're nobody now? Maybe that broken bed fits you perfectly." Something inside me snapped. I stepped forward and drove them apart. "Enough!" My voice cracked like a whip in the dim room. "Listen to yourselves." They froze. We ran away to be free, and already were tearing each other apart like starving dogs. I pointed at Hannah. "You think you're entitled to comfort because that's what your mother taught you." Then at Mason. "You're ready to crush your friend just to prove you're strong, because that's how you survived at home." The words surprised even me as they came out. "We didn't leave our families behind," I said more quietly. "We dragged them with us." Silence fell heavy across the hut. Our anger drained away, replaced by something far worse. Shame. Mason released the feather bed and sat heavily on the middle bunk, staring at his hands. "At home," he muttered, "my dad always called me weak, worthless. I thought if I came out here, I'd finally be strong." His jaw trembled. "But I'm not strong. I'm just mean." Hannah wiped her cheeks. "My mom smothers me," she whispered. "Always checking on me, telling me what to do. I thought it was a cage." Her voice cracked. "And now I'm scared to even fall asleep without hearing her in the next room." I looked back at the broken cot. Twisted metal, no support, no roots. It felt like looking into a mirror. We started comparing wounds. Whose home hurt more, whose parents lied worse, spilling the dirty laundry of our lives until exhaustion dulled the fight out of us. Eventually, Hannah climbed onto the feather bed, Mason curled onto the hard one, and I lay down on the broken frame. Cold iron dug into my spine. Sleep did not come easily. "Get some rest," I muttered into the darkness. "Something tells me Makar won't let us stay here for free." The hut creaked softly around us, as if listening. At some point, heavy sleep dragged us under. Morning never came. I woke to a sensation so strong it felt physical. We were no longer alone. The air had changed.
Thick, watching. In the center of the room stood a massive oak table that hadn't been there before, and behind it sat something. At first glance, it resembled a man wrapped in dark rags. Then it moved. My stomach dropped. Where a face should have been, there was only a gigantic mouth. No eyes, no nose, just folds of gray flesh stretched wide around rows of small, needle-like teeth. When it breathed, rotten steam poured from between them. The voice that followed sounded like dry bones grinding together. "Yes." Hannah screamed, a raw, tearing sound. She scrambled backward on the feather bed, covering her head. Mason went rigid, barely daring to inhale. My mind raced. Run into the night? Talk to it? Pretend we weren't here? The creature inhaled deeply, its mouth opening wider. "I'm hungry." Its long fingers dragged slowly across the tabletop, searching, waiting. Mason suddenly bolted for the stove. With shaking hands, he grabbed the cast-iron pot, the one holding yesterday's thin soup, and slammed it down in front of the thing. The creature seized it instantly. What followed was unbearable to hear. A violent slurping, metal scraping teeth, wet swallowing. Within seconds, the pot was empty. It dropped the vessel with a hollow clang. "Not tasty," it wheezed. "Empty. Water." The creature rose, much taller than we'd realized. It drifted toward the door, blocking our only exit. "I'm hungry," it repeated. Its head turned slowly toward us. "If no taste, then I eat you." Death filled the room. Then it paused, as if reconsidering. With a low rasp, it pushed the door open and vanished into the black forest beyond. We did not sleep again, not even close. We sat frozen until the rooster crowed and a weak gray dawn seeped through the window. Only then did the weight lift slightly from the air. The door creaked. Old man Makar stepped inside, calm as ever. He glanced at the empty pot. Then at our ghost-pale faces, and grinned. "Well now," he said lightly, "looks like you met hunger." I staggered to my feet. "What was that? And how do we get out before it comes back?" Makar's expression sharpened. "Hunger never leaves," he said quietly. You must give it taste." He jerked his head toward the yard. "Come." Behind the fence stretched a vegetable garden so lush it looked impossible against the dead wilderness surrounding it. Dark soil, heavy greens, life pushing stubbornly upward. Makar shoved a shovel into my hands. "Dig. Hunger returns at sunset. If the pot is empty again, it will finish what it started." Cold slid down my spine. "Cook something alive," he continued. "Season it with care. Fail, and you'll feed the earth instead." I drove the shovel into the soil with furious force, ripping potatoes free as if trying to tear answers from the ground itself. Gradually, the rhythm steadied me. Nearby, Hannah froze suddenly, clutching a beet. "Gabe," she whispered, "I know this smell." Wet earth, dill, beetroot. "My mom once locked me inside until I learned to cook borscht," she said shakily. "I hated her for it. Threw pans, screamed." Her fingers tightened around the vegetable. "But she was giving me something, not trapping me." Mason approached from the coop carrying a chicken carcass, pale but composed. "My grandma taught me how to do this," he said quietly. "Said if you truly want to feed someone, you do every step yourself." We gathered at the stove. No arguments, no pride, just work. Wood into flame, knife through vegetables, hands moving together. As the soup simmered, memories surfaced, uninvited. Breakfasts my mother made exactly how I liked them. Patience I'd mistaken for obligation. By evening, the aroma drifting from the pot was almost unbearable in its warmth. Real, alive, home. The door creaked open. Hunger returned. It paused on the threshold, sniffing. Its claws trembled, and for the first time, it did not look terrifying. It looked desperate. We sat around the table in complete silence. The only sounds were spoons touching clay and the low whisper of steam rising from the bowls. Hunger sat with us, not across the room, not lurking in shadow. With us. Up close, it seemed even larger, its eyeless head tilting slightly, as if listening to something none of us could hear. For a long moment, it simply breathed in the scent. Then, carefully, almost respectfully, it lifted the spoon. No slurping, no snarling. It tasted the soup and froze. Something shifted in the room. I watched the creature's shoulders loosen, watched the tension drain from its long, skeletal fingers. It ate slowly, deliberately, like a starving man afraid the food might vanish if he moved too fast. Across from me, Hannah wiped her brow with a shaky hand. Mason chewed quietly, focused, as if this meal were the most important work he had ever done. And suddenly, my chest tightened. Everything that had burned inside me, the anger, the resentment, the feeling of being an outsider, began to dissolve in the warmth spreading through my body. Not just hunger leaving my stomach, something deeper. "This," I whispered, my voice rough, "is the best thing I've ever tasted." And it was true. Not because we were starving, but because every bite carried memory, effort, care, home. At that exact moment, the air trembled. Shadows flickered wildly along the walls. I looked up just as Hunger's form began to change. Its massive mouth shrank. The gray folds pulled inward, claws shortened, rags reshaping themselves.
The transformation was silent, fluid, like wax melting near a flame. Seconds later, Old Man Makar sat before us, leaning back in his chair, deep, booming, alive. "Ah, children!" he roared, slapping his knees. "You should have seen your faces." Hannah nearly fell off her bench. Mason just stared. I couldn't speak. Makar wiped tears of laughter from his eyes before growing suddenly serious. "Well," he said, "now you understand." He leaned forward. "Hunger isn't in the belly. It lives in the soul, when you sever yourself from your roots." The words settled heavily into the space between us. He stood and walked to the door, threw it open. Sunlight poured inside, clear, golden. Beyond the threshold, unmistakable now, a narrow trail wound gently through the trees. The very road we had searched for. It had been there all along. "Go home," Makar said, not unkindly, but firmly. "And don't lose your way again." His pale eyes locked onto mine. "Home is not where papers say you belong. Blood is only water. Love is work. Remember that." We stepped outside. The forest felt different now, lighter, breathable, as if some invisible weight had lifted from the land itself. I turned to ask him something, anything, but the hut was already fading, its edges dissolving into the morning mist, logs sagging into shadow. Within seconds it looked like nothing more than an abandoned pile of timber swallowed by the wilderness. No smoke, no fence, no garden. Just forest. "Mason, did that really happen?" Hannah didn't answer. She was staring down the path. So was I. 10 miles to the highway. Then conversations we could no longer avoid. But something inside me had shifted so completely that the fear I expected never came. For the first time since that woman shattered my world, I understood something simple, something undeniable. I was not an outsider. I was someone people had chosen, someone they had poured their strength into, their patience, their years. And suddenly, that truth felt stronger than blood. We started walking, not running away this time, walking home.